We will get rolling. So if you're just coming in and you want to introduce yourself in the chat, that would be great. My name is Susie Taylor. I'm part of the Education Outreach and Diversity team for Montana NSF EPSCoR. I'm going to explain what that is in just a minute, but I'm located at Montana State University in Bozeman in the Science Math Resource Center. We are hoping that this will be a pretty interactive session today, so feel free to use the chat. Tricia, once we get going, I can monitor the chat for you and let you know if we have any questions. I'm sure we'll have time at the end, but I think if people have questions as we go along, you can go ahead and put those in the chat, or you can use the raise hand icon and we can call on you too. So just a few words really quickly. I know quite a few of you are part of the EPSCoR Cruise project, but if you are not, I'll give a very short explanation about what that is. So EPSCoR stands for the Established Program to Stimulate Competitive Research. It's a National Science Foundation award to the entire state of Montana. So that includes all the Montana University system and our tribal colleges. We go in 5-year award cycles, and we have just passed kind of the midway of that 5-year cycle. The theme of the research in this 5-year project is water quality. So we have scientists and engineers across the state who are looking at different factors that affect water quality. And then we have a really great team that works on education, outreach, communications, diversity, so that we can share the broader impacts of that research with people all across the state. So this is really exciting for me to be here today, and I think you're really going to enjoy hearing from Tricia Seifert and her great team that she's put together. As a science communicator myself, I'm always interested in intriguing ways that we can share science and research with the public. We always love innovative ways to do education and outreach. And I think today you're going to hear about a really fascinating topic. And then you'll also learn how you can be involved as we go forward in really helping to shape how this product turns out. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Tricia Seifert, my colleague in the Department of Education at Montana State University.
Cool, thanks, Susie. What Susie didn't share is not only am I her colleague, but I'm her friend and mountain bike buddy. And so just to keep us real and a little bit human, we do fun things. And I think that that's part of the notion of doing fun things includes games and why we are working on this project because, and it's taking a moment to load my screen, high school students and middle school students, they really, starting early is when you start to think about seeing yourself as college material. So I'm going to invite you to actually unmute and share with the group or maybe put in the chat, at what age did you think to yourself, yeah, I'm going to go to college? So I'll share my story first. I've always wanted to go to college. I've always dreamt of going away to school. I watched The Facts of Life from the time I was like 7 years old, and those girls were in high school, and I was like, oh my gosh, I can't wait. So maybe place in the chat, what are we seeing in terms of when people started to think about going to college? Sophomore in high school, right on. So those ages are really important. I always wanted to go. I'm with you, Matt. And helping students start to see themselves as college material often needs to happen before they even start junior year, certainly by freshman year, because think about all those course decisions you have to make. So the research suggests certainly by 6th grade, students need to start thinking about what kinds of education or how much education might they need. So with that in mind, this crash course in college readiness comes out of my research. I wanted to share a little bit about around the country, these students represent actually what is the norm. There is so much excitement about going to college, and you can just feel the stoke from these students holding up their pennants, showing off their sweatshirt. I bet if we were in U of M, you're gonna like show us some Grizz stuff. If you're here at MSU, we're gonna, give a shout out to the Bobcats. The Cat Grizz game is coming up, by the way. And despite all of this excitement, the reality is that across the United States, 1 out of these 4 students is not going to return for their second year of college. And when you think about that, that's a pretty tremendous loss. 25% of all college students around the country don't return even for their second year. And so when you consider this loss and what do students have, they probably walk away with some amount of debt, right? They owe money. They have maybe a collection of credits, but they have no degree. And they may be walking away not feeling very good about their college experience. And so the game that I've been working on with David and Spencer and others, Eli, who we're recording this for him because he's in Germany working on the game development bachelor's degree program online. We're trying to come up with ways that middle school and high school students can practice and test and play what it's like to go to college before the consequences are real. But before we even can get to college, we have to have an idea about like colleges for me. And if you look at this slide, over the last 5 years, there has been a substantial drop in the number of students who year over year are even pursuing college. So this is before COVID. And we know that the COVID numbers in 2020 tanked even further to the point that at public 2-year colleges, that year over year drop was 13% on the bottom side. And so part of the idea with the game is if students can start to think about going to college early, they'll be more likely to pursue it and then persist, then to graduate and then move into jobs, 2/3 of which are going to need some form of formal education beyond high school. And so where are students? They're gaming. They're on their games. And those games are consoles and their computers and their phones. And so that's why we started thinking really creatively about how to use games to tell the college story. You've probably all remember getting those glossy view books in the mail. Imagine if a glossy view book now came onto your phone in the form of a game and got you enticed and excited to go be a Grizz or to be a cat or to go to some other college. That's the possibility that this game has. And why are we doing it? So I know that a number of you on this call are researchers. And as researchers, you want to know what is the evidence that what you're doing is making a difference. So if you're going to use some new intervention in water quality, how do you know? Well, you take observations and then you compare before and after that intervention, that use of a new technique. So there's been a lot of writing about game-based learning and gamification. They're not the exact same thing. They're actually quite different. Game-based learning is when we really use games themselves. The game themselves teach the content. Gamification is when we use concepts often from games in non-gaming contexts. So think about like when you are in a math tutorial or in some sort of thing and you played Kahoot or you answered points and you were able to level up and you had a leaderboard and there was some sort of competition maybe between your row and another row in the classroom. And so there's been a whole body of research and evidence that have looked at the effects of game-based learning and gamification on students' college knowledge, their cognitive competencies, their grades, and does it work? Well, in a nutshell, according to Willy Wonka, is yes. Yes, it does. And the research base suggests that all of these outcomes are positively associated with gameplay. So when you look at social emotional learning, cognitive learning, learning about different scientific processes, there's probably been a game developed that exists to help students learn how to do water quality monitoring, for example. And so we're now trying to really crack in to making a game around this college readiness piece. And so part of why games make a difference is because they allow you to have you have some autonomy. Your player is making choices. No one's telling you what to do. And then you get to see how those choices play out in consequences. Do you level up or or in some games are you killed off? And do you have to start over and, have a new game start in? And the other reason why games are so effective is because people, students, players find flow. And flow is that state where time just sort of holds still when you just, before you know it, you're sucked in. You might be into the third hour of playing Monopoly, or I don't know, I'm going to invite you to type into the chat. When was the last time you played a game or you just found yourself lost in the time? What was going on? Maybe share. I'm going to invite someone to unmute themselves though. Anyone want to unmute and share when was the last time you hit flow state?
I played Jenga the other night. That was pretty great.
Dominoes, 2048. David, I know you, what's the game that I often see when I go onto Discord? It says you're playing something.
I play a lot of Hearts of Iron. That's probably what you see. It's a World War II like simulator where you get to play any country in the world and run it through World War II. It's great. I like to play it with family actually.
Yeah. And that's the other thing. That's why we know games contribute to student learning because they're using the game to tell a story. My hunch is, David, in playing that game, you've learned way more about World War II than you ever did from a textbook in high school. Is that a fair assumption?
Oh yeah, and because it is like the entire world, naturally there's a history component to it, but there's also a huge geography component to it. I mean, times have changed, countries are different, but there's a lot of the same things going on. Like I know Sudan was a British colony because that's the way it was in World War II.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I love it. Susie was just saying that her son plays Red Dead Redemption for hours. So he finds flow. And before you know it, he's comparing these fictional worlds to real places and history. And this is why games are such a valuable learning tool, why they can be such a valuable outreach tool to tell your science story, to talk about your research and the kind of work you do as a graduate student, as a faculty member. The board game pandemic, oh, that's a little too close to home, right? Yeah, so true. And that's really the opportunity and why we're working on this project. So, because college is a game. And I'm just gonna ask, um, share in the chat at what different parts of college did you find like you're like, I don't know these rules. There seems to be rules and language and lingo and jargon and expectations that like, how was anyone supposed to know that? Feel free to unmute yourself to share when did the college game sort of smack you in the face? I know I didn't know what a bursar was. Like, who is this person named bursar? I've never heard this crazy term. Well, they're an important person because it's where you pay your bills. And if you don't know where to pay your bills, you might not be in good standing to register for the next semester. And if you're now at the end of the line for registration, you may not be able to get the classes that you need or want at the time frame that you'd like. But it's so interesting. Freshman year just beginning and figuring out navigating student loans, paying for college, all of those sorts of things. Absolutely. That is actually referred to in the literature as developing navigational and college knowledge, like the knowledge of how to do college, as opposed to feeling like you've been done in by college. I've never figured out how to go to the health center. Yes. So true. I'm just looking through the chat. What comes next? So you've made it to freshman year, but what do you do next? This game will start to unveil in practice and play so that when students come to college for real, they've already tested their strategy around time management and around balance and so forth. And so at this point, I'm going to stop sharing my screen and ask David and Spencer to share a little bit about what they've been working on in this project and what got them interested in coming on board.
Yeah, sure. So, hi, I'm David. I'm the game programmer for the base game that has been developed. And lately, I've been doing a lot of the stuff like getting the UI all set up nice, so that it looks like professional. And I was interested in this project, just because, well, this project actually hits a little close to home for me personally, because this is actually my second attempt at college that I'm about to graduate from. Uh, about would have been 6 to 8 years ago, I took my first attempt at college right out of high school. It was the thing everybody did. So I jumped right in, and I just failed at it. Time management was non-existent. I was huge into video games, though at the time I didn't see that as a possible career choice for some strange reason. Uh, and so I didn't keep up with my classes. I played games all day because nobody was really controlling my life anymore. And so that naturally did not go very well. After about 6 years in the military, which came of that, I finally built up those key skills that I needed, time management, because in the military, if you don't show up to stuff, you get in serious trouble. It's not a choice. And that kind of prepared me for the college experience that I'm about to graduate from now. So I was definitely wanting to help build out this game to give prospective college students a chance to see, this is what college is like. These are the skills you need to employ. Knowing how to manage a schedule is very important. These are all things that I wouldn't have even considered before I personally took my first attempt at college. So I felt that this was a good way to help potential students in the future understand some of these key concepts before they actually make the choice. And as Tricia said, I probably took out about $10,000 in that single year of college that I was out. And not to mention the impacts my GPA has taken from 1 year of essentially Fs on a transcript. I mean, even though I attempted college again 6 years later, all those grades are still there, and they could greatly impact, what schools I could be getting into, scholarships, and all those things. So I think it's very important that students have an opportunity to see this is what you need to do before they get into college.
Yeah. So my, can you guys hear me all right? Yeah. Okay. Yeah, my situation is a little similar to David's as well, except being in the military. I went into college first year out of high school and did really bad, and then I dropped out for 3 years and started going back again after I'd experienced like real world stuff and how much fun that can be. So the second time around, time management is a much more important thing for me, and I value it more. So yeah, no, I thought it was a really cool idea to be a part of this game. That it's a pretty unique idea. Like there's simulator games out there, but I've never heard of like a full-on college simulator game. So, and yeah, I'm doing the 3D art for the game and all that stuff. That's kind of my role in it.
Thanks for sharing. David, why don't you share your screen and maybe pull up a couple either stills or MP4s so that folks can get a sense of what we're working on. So the game consists of several different status bars, and one of them, probably central to the game, honestly, is time management. And I'm looking around and hearing just David and Spencer's stories, like time management is so It is the key to everything. And I have to say, I'm way out of college, and time management is the key to my life. It never goes away. I mean, it has staying power. And thinking through how you're going to prioritize competing demands is something that will stand you well throughout life. And so the time bar and how that connects to your wellness, your friends, your academics. If you don't go to class and spend your time making that choice, it's going to have implications on your GPA. How you spend time is going to have implications on your budget. Like, did you choose to go to work? Because when you go to work and make that choice, then you're going to see your budget go up. And so this is the initial prototype of the campus and the schedule that just flashed down. These are, in many ways, I would say, assets that are third party, that are picked up anywhere. What David and Eli and Spencer are working on is the coding behind this game, and Spencer and the team are working to create unique assets that will really tell this unique story. And so because of the EPSCoR grant and the focus on water, we as a team spent a couple days on Discord talking through, like, what would the water feature look like? And so we are hoping to work with you graduate students to hear what are the stories about graduate students in science that we can infuse into the story of the game. And by that, we envision having players be able to choose different majors, and based on those majors and the classes, have assignments that are really real world, that come out of the kinds of assignments that you did for your major. To have interactions and engagements and research opportunities within the game that tell the story of the kinds of things that you have encountered as graduate students in STEM fields. And so really, in many ways, we're hoping to engage with EPSCoR graduate students to build out an understanding of the story that we then program into the code of the experience. I'm going to stop and ask David or Spencer to modify or maybe put into more accurate gaming language what it is that I just shared. Do you have anything to add, Spencer, David?
I think you did a pretty good job of describing it there. David, any thoughts?
I think he's multitasking. Maybe at this point, I'll just pause and get some feedback from those who are the graduate students and faculty members and others, and who are really involved in the EPSCoR side of the project, to get your initial thoughts and feedback. And I think, David, yeah, you could stop sharing your screen if you want. You're like, or I can't. There we go.
Hey, I got it to work. Sorry, I lost the entire WebEx window and I couldn't open it up again.
Maybe initial feedback from the group.
I have a question. It looks amazing on the interface. And I'm curious kind of like what other, and maybe that's part of the feedback and like talking with folks, but the other skills that you're hoping to like communicate or put into the game that students like will gain, like talking about time management, but I'm curious like what other ones like y'all have focused on and you think are important to have in it.
Yeah, so a couple things that immediately, so time management, and then I would say the other really key thing has to do with friends and sort of your social network. So as players engage with different friends have personalities, right? Those, and not all friends are the same. And we're going to have friends that have different relationship maintenance, right? So some friends are kind of needy. You need to spend a lot of time with them. Other friends are kind of costly, right? Like they're the ones who always want to go out. And so in order to maintain that friendship in the game, your pocketbook is gonna take a hit when you hang out with friend Y, who's a little bit of a party animal. And then there will also be friends that are kind of stressful, right? The drama friends who will have some friendship benefits, but also may decrease modestly your wellness, because that level of drama, if you have all drama friends, that is going to have serious repercussions because it's just too much to deal with all of that stuff. And so this will be modeled in the game, this social emotional learning piece around friendship maintenance. The other key pieces where I think that we could really are looking for your assistance is in building out the story of the games, and perhaps we're working on what we call a mini game. So a game within the game. Imagine your avatar, your player walks to your ecology class, and you walk into the class, you've navigated to the building, you walk into the class, and boom, a game about ecology, but the knowledge and the skills of like what it requires tells a story and then challenges a player across a number of different levels. So this is a chance to sort of teach students both the content and the skill that they would be learning if they were to pursue that major. So we're working on, for example, an early pilot module. Eli, who's in Germany, is taking the lead on this around, and we've been working with welding faculty. So welding is a really interesting knowledge and skill base in that there is a 2-year major. If you go to a community college, you might major in welding. If you pursued a number of different 4-year university degrees, having a welding class is probably on your program of study as well, right? Like there's virtually no agriculture major in Montana State who has not spent some time in the welding studio lab, because stuff breaks on the ranch and you have to fix it because no one's going to drive the 300 miles out to Plentywood to fix something that you should know how to do. And so we're using these games within a game to teach additional skills, to provide insight into the kinds of content, in many ways, when you think about science communication, to entice students that this is cool. Like, don't you want to be a part of this? And that's where you all come in, is helping us understand where's the cool? What's the story that can be used in the science and STEM outreach to invite 7th graders through 12th graders to see themselves in a college or university setting pursuing these areas of study?
Cool, thank you.
I have a question.
Yeah.
First of all, my undergrad is long in the rearview mirror. And unlike some of you, I was unable to go to school right out of high school. Actually, I went the fall after all my friends graduated. So I was like 4 years behind everybody. My question is there are students that maybe weren't in the same position as I was, but I lived off campus, so I worked and I drove to school. And there were times where the way the schedule was, it didn't pay for me to drive all the way home and come back. So I spent my time wherever I could find it on campus. And some days I spent the entire Sunday in the library in the computer lab. Will the students have the choice as to whether they are a on-campus student where they're staying there, or for students who don't have that option because they go to a local, like I went to a local state school? And then the other thing is, you didn't mention it, but I'm sure you're including like clubs and activities that were there. I mean, and I was lucky enough to have a lot of professors that took us, even though it was not a major school, we did go do a lot of field work outside within our class.
Yep.
So those are some of the things that I remember. And I look back now at my schedule, and I still don't know how I got all that done and worked and took care of my laundry and everything else.
Yeah, so students, there's a sort of a pre-entry into the game survey that asks the player to identify, so that they're actually thinking through the decisions that they'll have to make. What are you interested in? And then we give groupings of broad major types. Like, what interests you? How many credits do you envision that you would take in a given semester? And then we break it out, like, if you wish to graduate in 4 years, then you'll need to take 15 credits per semester. If you wish to be full-time, but not necessarily graduate in 4 years, then you can take 12 credits. If you wish to be part-time, so that they're consciously thinking through, like, what is this whole notion of a credit load and full-time versus part-time? Then I think the next frame asks students to, or players, to identify if they're going to work. And we give some recommended, like, if you're taking this many credits, you shouldn't work this much, right? So that's where drawing from my research base feeds into sort of the decision matrices that players are confronted with. And so there are places where students can go and hang out. Spencer and David have been working a lot on the student union building and the multiple floors within the student union building, and those things. Where we would really need and look for your guidance is around those. What are those clubs and activities that are EPSCoR based, where students like yourselves in these fields of study, what would be the name of that club? What kinds of things would they do? We see you as co-story writers, right? If you think about, like, there's the game mechanics, there's the game artwork, but there's the game story. And college is a story as much as anything. And in order to make it engaging, we have to have a pretty awesome storyline. And so this is where we're really looking for your assistance.
Well, I'm interested only if I was teaching high school before I decided to finally go for my master's degree, which I'm doing online through MSU, and I actually, most of the environmental students that I had in my classes were the ones that came to me to ask me about colleges, what should they take, all that stuff that they were not aware of, and their guidance counselor was fine with that. So I think this is a fantastic idea, because a lot of them had lots of questions, and I think that it would benefit them so much.
Mm-hmm. Yep. It's why it is the dream project. This is the dream project for me. I'm all in, and it's because I think before I met David, I have these 4 nephews who play similar games, and I just observed how fully immersed they were and how much they've learned. And one of those pictures on that slide that I closed out with was the drawings that they sat down and did over one Christmas holiday break. Like, I threw out the idea, like, this is what I'm working on. What do you think? And I co-opted our entire Christmas. It wasn't my intention. I didn't mean to put my nephews to work for 4 days solid, but they saw the possibility. They wanted to be into.
I have a question.
Mhm.
So my name's Matt Trevin. I'm a postdoc at UM. Do you allow research to be work? Because I think that's one thing a lot of undergrads that may not necessarily realize, that they can get paid to do research and work in the lab and get experience. And so I think presenting that as an option might be interesting.
Yeah, we definitely have. So David and Spencer, maybe we should share some of the ideas we've had for work, which includes some undergraduate research. So we've brainstormed working in the library, obviously working in the dining hall. That's probably the most common thing for most first-year students. But all other like so we're envisioning this river that runs through the campus, and there's work opportunities that are associated with the boathouse and with the other kinds of sort of water quality monitoring pieces of the river habitat. What else am I
I
forgetting?
know we've also discussed systems where, like, if you have a significantly high GPA, you can build a relationship with your professor, and then again that opens up research opportunities with that professor. Um, we've talked about various work study opportunities, like you mentioned about the working in the library, the staying at like working in the, we call it the food zoo here on our campus, and those potential opportunities. And I think there's just a lot of opportunity for tying the systems together. Like GPA can affect your ability to get grants in the future for financial aid, and it begins to help students see how all these different systems are interconnected with one another.
Yeah. And the other thing about so not having it all unveil at once is the college experience doesn't all unveil at once either. So this is consistent with gaming theory, which is you want to entice people to keep playing so that they level up, so that a new thing unveils. That undergraduate research opportunity is the result of doing well in class, attending on a regular basis, building a relationship with the professor, and then the new thing unveils, like, oh, you've done all of these things now. And that's, I think that's also the enticing opportunity to use games to tell the story.
Trish, I have to put in a plug that one of the student jobs is the science communications intern. Wouldn't that be cool? Or maybe someone who does science related arts or graphic design or photography. That would be really awesome. And then I just wanted to note, I was really glad that David mentioned relationships with professors, because when you were talking about relationships with friends, I remember when I first went to college, everybody would say, oh, you have to get to know your professors. You really have to have a relationship. I was just too shy to do that. I never did it. I think I suffered because I didn't have those close relationships, even though they're just people. So I think that's really cool that that's part of the game too, is learning how to make that relationship, not just with your peers, but with your professors too.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you have this in there already, but it could be helpful to add in the like hierarchy of some labs where you have graduate students, postdocs, and then the professor. And bigger schools, you'll often interact more with a grad student than you will with the professor. And so,
Yeah.
and that could be a venue for letting students know that graduate school is a possibility, and in biology, you can get paid or a stipend at least to go to grad school. And that's not something I learned until I was a junior or senior in college. So.
Right. And also to talk about TAs. I mean, there's a lot of students who, when they first get to college, especially if you're at a large public university, like, what do you mean the professor is not teaching my class? Who is this TA person? I'm paying for a professor, like, okay, so this is who a TA is. This is how they operate within honestly, the academic social structure and the stratification and the hierarchy. Yeah. So I'm thinking that, like, if you're interested in being part of sort of the story design team, I don't think we're looking for a huge time commitment. Probably 1 or 2 hours over the next couple months to participate in a focus group where we can sort of hear from you in real time and allow you to sort of riff off each other around stories so that we can get some material. And then probably just completing a survey so that we can get like kind of lists, if you will, of the different kinds of things you've been involved in. I might, in fact, you ask for CVs for the people who are interested and do a CV review so that you're not having to type all that in a second time. But I can see what seems to be missing and see, like, is there anything else? This is what we've heard from folks. Is there anything more? Does that seem like a reasonable ask and something that you think either yourself or some of your classmates and colleagues would be interested in?
I'm definitely interested, and I'm sure I could rope in some postdocs and grad students at UM.
Awesome. Awesome.
I'm interested too, and I've talked to Susie, can help coordinate with folks that we think might be good to be included as well.
Cool. That's great.
I would be interested, although I don't know how much I bring to the table other than dealing with the actual target audience that you are going with, having taught high school. I don't know if, I mean, plus my old, I didn't go to a large university, but you know, I would be interested, at least from the fact that I have dealt with the students that you are actually targeting.
Oh, I think that's very valuable. I mean, I'm looking at Spencer and David. We spend a lot of time thinking about the user experience. And within the user experience, maintaining the motivation with it for the UE, right? Like it doesn't serve its purpose if students don't keep playing, right? We also know from research that in order for game-based learning to have its effect, like anything, there is a minimal amount of time on task in order for that learning to manifest. If it's kind of a quickie one and done, I mean, think about anything you've attended. If it's just then and never again, the learning at most is superficial. And so we're really looking for a more immersive kind of experience.
Tricia, I really liked your prompt to think about clubs and activities, or maybe it was somebody else who mentioned that. That would be a really intriguing question to ask all of the EPSCoR team members about what clubs you did or what activities you did. And I'll just put in a pitch that you should make a citizen science club, please, which would be really fun. I also really like the game within a game, because there is a game that has a citizen science game in it. I think it's Borderlands. Maybe the gamers know about this, but there's actually, you walk in and there's an old school console game, and you play a citizen science game on inside the game, which is pretty sweet. I've not seen it myself, but I love the idea of turning the content that people are learning through the EPSCoR project into miniature games. That's really cool.
Well, we'll certainly need to have a science Olympiad club.
Right.
For sure. I mean, that serves two purposes. Gets them thinking about contributing as volunteers and as coaches and so forth when they're in college on Science Olympiad, but maybe raises the interest in participating in their own middle school or high school Science Olympiad.
I like that.
Double duty there. Other sort of comments or thoughts, questions you have? So I think I want to ask a question around a timeline in terms of engaging with folks. I recognize that we're kind of coming to the end of what in university feels like it's the end of the academic semester, and then oftentimes people all spread and go on holiday break and then return at some point in January. But I'm just curious what thoughts are in order to gather a focus group virtually before the semester closes, as well as even during the holiday break. I'm envisioning the focus group minimally starting as a virtual one, something like this, which really allows you to participate from anywhere. I've kind of come to love that. We wouldn't be able to work with Eli if it wasn't for this format. Because he's in Germany and it's several time zones away. So what do folks think about that timeline? Would people be available and interested in participating as soon as early December?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, for me, that's not a problem. I work more in the water and water quality side, and I've already come up with a few ideas for this game inside a game possibility. So I think I have a lot to talk about, and especially if I bring in some other water quality people too.
Awesome.
That sounds good, Tricia, and too kind of thinking about querying other EPSCoR cruise folks too that might want to be involved and couldn't make it today.
Mm-hmm. So the UM semester, is your finals week the week of December 13th through the 17th?
Yeah, that sounds about right.
That's our finals week, with graduation being on that Friday, the 17th. Is there, I mean, I feel like you can't study every single hour. And so sometimes having a break even during finals week or the week before is a gift. How do you folks feel about something even as early as first full week in December or during finals week? Would that be a no-go or possible?
I'm sure it'd be fine with me. I don't know if I even have any traditional finals.
Yeah, I don't have any like finals this semester, so I'm good.
Yeah, most of my work these days is all project-based stuff. So
Yeah.
Mine too. Well, that's really exciting. I'm thrilled to hear this interest and the willingness to even get going on things, and getting some of the story ideas, because we're coming up on a point where we're going to start needing the story. And I know that gathering the story doesn't happen overnight. And so in terms of just sort of sequencing the work on our part, David and Spencer are blocking out the physical spaces and working on those components. But we're going to need to start collecting the story so that once all the blocking is done, we don't lose any time. And we're able to just roll right into the story implementation and the coding to bring that story to life. If there's nothing else, Susie, I'm always like sensitive about holding people's time because I know how important and limited it is. I'm just gonna throw into the chat how you can reach out to me if you have any additional questions or you want to follow up.
Yeah, and I think we can get going trying to get some focus groups together pretty soon. Maybe we just schedule several different times. Matt, that would be awesome if you know some people at U of M to participate. Madison knows lots of people at MSU. Teresa, you're an online student, is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, awesome. So you could participate in any online focus group too, or I think that's really cool that you know the high school audience. That's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
I'm actually working in a school district now as a substitute teacher after my short term in Iowa. So I'm in the elementary school right now, but because I like it there, but I can, if you're looking for anything like that, I mean, even they start talking about college early.
Yeah, absolutely. And So I always leverage my connections with the schools to send out links for play testing. And we'll definitely be at a point of needing some play testers in next semester for sure. And I think play testing with the target audience is just the best. I can play test something, but I bring my own lens to it, and I am not part of the target population.
I can reach out. My friend also works in a school district in New York. And
Oh, awesome.
she's been there, so I'll plant the seed.
Yeah, that sounds great. Excellent. Well, I just from my behalf, I just want to thank those of you who came onto the call today. Just really want to amplify the awesome work that Spencer and David and Eli have done to take these ideas and bring them to life with cool artwork and lots of effort. So it takes a team. And you were part of the team because it takes a story to make a game.
So should we look for an email from Susie maybe about planning this focus group? Is that the next step?
Yeah, that sounds great. I'll coordinate with Trish and the team. And Matt, if you know some people that you can just kind of see if they're interested, if you want to even suggest a time, maybe that, that would be one way to go too. And maybe we'll just look at setting up several different times that people can plug into.
Okay, sounds good.
Yeah, awesome.
Awesome.
Well, thanks, Tricia and Spencer and David and Eli when you watch the recording. I'm super excited, even though I've gotten to learn more about this prior to this conversation. I learned a lot just now, and my wheels are kind of turning about content that we have that I think will be valuable to everybody. So thank you very much.
This is awesome. Thanks so much. Have a good night or
Thank you.
day, whatever time zone.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.